Alright, hello everyone. DSP here, and welcome to another edition of Ask the King. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can believe it, this is the 49th episode, consecutive episode, of Ask the King. This show has been running for some, I believe at this point, it's actually been about, 5 years, if not longer? If you remember the history of Ask the King, I started as Friend Request Ridicule, where I was basically taking inbox messages from my Xbox dashboard, and I started doing funny things in response to it. Then it turned into a fan mail series that was a heck of a lot less malicious, and then it turned into Ask the King. We've been doing this, for quite some time, and I just want to say up front, thank you guys very much for participating, for being a part of the experience for the past 6+ years that I've been doing stuff on YouTube, for the 5 or so years that I've actually been doing Ask the King. Now, before we get to your questions, of which we have many questions, okay, I just want to make it clear that next month there's going to be some changes to Ask the King. It's not going to be a crazy, oh no, he's changing the format and he's changing. Not really. There's just going to be different segments to Ask the King because I launched my Patreon account exactly 1 week ago. And one of the levels of perks for people who pledge to my Patreon account is that they actually get priority access to have their questions answered on Ask the King. Now, if you don't know what that means, basically it means that if people donate a certain amount to me every month, they're going to either 100% get their question asked, or else they're going to have a hell of a great chance to have their question asked. Now, originally I thought, gee, we'll do one segment, it'll be like 10 questions, right? This month, because of the overwhelming amount of Patreon support that I've received, we had over 20 people who reached that level. Now, admittedly, we don't know if that's going to go through. The way Patreon works is you can pledge a certain level, but then when they actually go to charge you, does it work? People can pull back their pledge at the last minute, which happened with a few people last month in January. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen. How many people will realistically get that level, okay? So whoever hits that level is going to have a very increased chance to have their question answered on next month's Ask the King. If you do pledge that level and you don't get your question asked, submit again, and the month after you'll get priority, okay? That's how it's going to work. Eventually, if you pledge that level, you will get a question answered on Ask the King. It's basically a way to guarantee it. But I just want to let everyone know, Ask the King is and always will be a free and open thing. Don't think that I'm going to, oh no, I'm not going to answer any questions from people who don't, pledge to me on Patreon. That's very much not the case. It's going to be a split where we're going to have forum questions, Patreon questions, and then probably Facebook and Twitter questions. It's kind of how I'm seeing it, evolve in the future. So, for those of you who haven't had a chance to check it out yet, please check it out. Patreon.com/DarksidePhil, spelled just like my name with the Y in there. And, insane amount of positive reaction to my Patreon since I launched it a week ago. Let me tell you guys, I did not expect it. I mean, I have goals on there that I thought were going to take several months for people to contribute to and reach that, and we hit all the freaking goals the very first day, which is absolutely out of control, okay? And again, we're not 100% guaranteed that those will go through, but there's a strong chance that we're going to hit some, if not all, of the goals. March is going to be a crazy month. Seriously, with me playing Minecraft and a playthrough that the patrons are going to vote on, and an indie marathon, if we definitely get that much goal confirmed, it's going to be out of control. And I thank you guys for the participation. What I'll say is this: for those of you who are interested and have kind of been holding back, you only have a few days left to get in on March. All right, if you get in on the Patreon for March, it means that you're basically going to get your perks for that month, including shout-outs and or text thank yous and videos. You're going to get priority forum access. You're going to have a special area of the forums where you can talk and you can vote on the projects and goal levels that we hit. So you're going to definitely want to get in on it in the next few days before it's too late. Basically, at the end of February, that's it. Then we're talking about contributing for the next month, which will be April. All right, so only a few days left, being that today's the 26th. You got 2 more days. Jump in if you can, the final stretch, and then we'll see what happens with that, okay? That's it. That's enough about Patreon. On to the questions, because I don't want to just be a living commercial here. You know me, okay? All right, so our very first question on this episode of Ask the King is from Hiruko, okay? And Hiruko asks a very pertinent question. I just want to make it clear, this was not the only person who asked this question. Several people did, all right? So let me get into it. I've noticed Phil, that some playthroughs such as Tales of Symphonia, Tales of Exilia 2, and Parasite Eve have been considered on hiatus for a while now. Now, I understand why, being that JRPGs are meant for downtime periods, there's a general lack of interest on either side when it comes to certain kinds of games, and or in the case of the latter two, being close to the hardcore gaming season. While it may be too late to go back to them, at the very least, would it be appreciated to have you be honest and say that basically they're done, and that in future situations, can you outright announce that you're 100% discontinuing certain playthroughs to avoid potential backlog or misconception that you will get back to those games? Would this make sense? If not, how would you change your response? It's an interesting point. I definitely want to say that. It's an interesting point, because you're right. There are certain playthroughs in 2014 that I had intention of continuing and or starting and or finishing is what I meant to say, not starting. And I just never got back to them, alright? The big one for me is Tales of Exilia 2, because that's the direct sequel to a game that I played in 2013, and I did like the game. I actually didn't like it as much as the original, but I did like the game. But the game is so effing long that it was taking me so long. First of all, it released in late August, which I think is terrible. It should not have a JRPG like that releasing in late August right before the hardcore gaming season. It should have been in the middle of summer when there was a lot more downtime, but it didn't. It released late. I played as much as I could until I got caught up with the new releases, right? And then, unfortunately, I just never got back to it. People are saying you're in the end game of it. You basically got, like, maybe 8 hours left. Of course, people are also saying it's the hardest part of the game, and it might take grinding and stuff to continue on. The bottom line is, do I like the game? Yes. Will I ever get back to it? I don't know. And the bottom line is, you know, when you have this much of a time frame between when the game was last played and now, chances are if I were to pick it up and start playing it again, very few people would care. They'd say, well, we waited too long. We either went and played the game ourselves or we watched another playthrough, and we just don't care. You've had us on hiatus for some, 4 or 5 months. We're not going to go back to your playthrough. Okay? In addition, you got another one like Parasite Eve. Now, Parasite Eve was a different story. During October, which was the hardcore gaming season, there was 1 week that was actually pretty empty. There was nothing going on, and I said, I'm going to do horror-themed games. So I actually played Resident Evil 3, and I did beat that. And I also played Parasite Eve, and I never got to beat it. For various reasons. There were a few different reasons that happened. And, a lot of people said, well, Phil, you only have 2 to 3 hours left. Can you go back to it? Can you finish it? But by the time that I finally had free time, which was sometime in January, it was like, I haven't played the game. I don't even know if I would remember the game or how to play it or what I was doing in it, And it sucks. This is the kind of stuff that's going to happen, all right? It's going to happen over time. And when I have a busy schedule, when people are clamoring to see the new games, right? This is the kind of thing that will unfortunately happen. Okay? And I know that some people might say, well, it sucks because maybe that was the one particular game of mine that you really were interested in, right? I apologize for that, but that is the nature of the beast. That is the nature of being a full-time YouTuber, is that you kind of have to adapt and adjust to what's going on in the climate of everything going on YouTube. If there's a hot new game, sometimes you got to jump on it. Sometimes you just have to, do what you want to do. The good thing about 2015 is that I've decided that in the case of things like this, that if I am really enjoying a game and I want to continue on with it, or I feel that it would make a good playthrough regardless of the fact that if there's viewership or there's other stuff going on, Patreon is a big way that's going to change that. Because I don't have to worry about, oh no, I'm doing a playthrough, but it's not getting a ton of views, and I could be spending time doing something else that's going to make more views and more money. Well, since I have Patreon now, if Patreon continues to be successful, that helps me with that. I don't have to worry about getting top views on every video that I put out there, right? A perfect case of this is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. I started playing it, and very few people really kind of caught on to the playthrough, and even the streams aren't getting amazing viewership. But I'm continuing with the game, regardless of the fact that I'm almost 100 parts now. I'm still continuing on with it because I'm sticking with it, and I want to beat it, being that it's a great game that I missed from my younger years. I'm playing it for the first time, and I'm very much enjoying it. And I don't really care about the viewership. I want to continue with the game and beat it. And so, because of Patreon supporting me and saying, well, you don't have to worry too much about views because you got this big side support, I'm able to do that. I might not have been able to do that previously. Okay? So, the bottom line is, I apologize that there are playthroughs like those that unfortunately kind of get lost in the shuffle. Those aren't the only games, by the way. There's been games like this over the years that have kind of just gotten lost. Ongoing playthroughs that didn't get completed. The bottom line is I'm one man. I can't finish everything. I only have a certain amount of time to do stuff every day, and if I had unlimited time, I would play, you know, all these games and finish them to completion. But once you have such a long period of time between when the playthroughs were going and when they actually, you know, continue, that even if I started playing it, people probably wouldn't care, or they'd be like upset that it took so long. So, in conclusion, okay, I would say 100% consider Tales of Symphonia closed. It's been almost a year since I played the game. There's no way I'm going to be able to go back to it and jump back into it realistically and start playing it again. Tales of Exilia 2. I'm kind of torn on this one, and here's why I'm torn. I like the game, but not as much as the first one. I'll be honest, I think the game drags on a little bit and isn't as good as the first one. And people are saying the next portion of the game that I was about to start is incredibly difficult and requires grinding, which I don't have time to do. Everyone knows I don't grind in games anymore. Since I moved, I don't have time to do it anymore. So realistically, could I have even have proceeded? Or would I have hit a brick wall in Tales of Exilia 2? And so the answer is I want to play it, but I don't think I can, realistically, without dedicating a ton of time to a playthrough that probably most people don't want to see, and I don't want to grind in it. I don't think it's going to be worth it, especially with all the cool new stuff coming out and all the new projects and stuff I'm going to be doing that are Patreon related. I think people would love that more, and I would enjoy doing that more. So I would say I think the Tales of Exilia 2 is kind of considered closed at this point. I don't think we're going to go back to it, all right? Parasite Eve is kind of the exception, because I think that if I did jump back into Parasite Eve for a few hours, I could probably beat it. The problem is, what is the time to do it? There is no perfect time to do it. It's going to have to be a day when literally I have nothing to do. I have nothing to do. It's just a day to kill time. I may come back to Parasite Eve. I'm not 100% guaranteeing it, but I'm saying I will probably, return to it if I finally get a time to do it. I will do it. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I would like to, all right? In the future, I'll try to be more transparent. If I'm in the middle of a playthrough and then for a month I get caught up with other stuff, I'll give you the definitive answer whether or not that playthrough is going to continue, okay? All right. So, let's continue. Next question is from Onorub, or Onorub. I don't know how to pronounce it. I apologize. The question is, could you point out the biggest pros and cons with gaming becoming mainstream, specifically because of mobile gaming? All right. So here's the deal, all right? Here's the absolute deal about mainstream. And it's kind of the same thing that happened with Street Fighter, the same thing that happened with Call of Duty and first-person shooters, and now it's kind of happening with all of gaming. For gaming to appeal to the widest possible audience, it has to be watered down. At one point, when gaming was just becoming popular in the 80s and 90s, and when I say that, I mean home gaming, okay? Playing on consoles at home or PC. Gaming was for the hardcore, right? They were challenging, they were grueling, you really had repetitive gameplay, but there was an element of completionist challenge to any game that you played, right? It wasn't about, oh, I'll play a game for 5 minutes and I put it down. It was, I'm going to dedicate myself and play for hours and beat this really challenging thing. And then games became more about better graphics and better stories and becoming more artistic in the 90s into the 2000s. And then in the late 2000s, something happened. People realized that everyone has one of these, right? Everyone has a mobile device, whether it's an iPhone or it's one of these fancy, smartphones or an iPad or whatever. And people who were in game development said, let's try something different. Let's actually try, instead of going for better graphics, more robust experiences, artistic stories and stuff like that, let's just dumb down gaming to the point where it's cutesy, it's repetitive, and it hooks the player where they want to keep playing, and we can have a bunch of microtransactions that are going to keep them coming back. Instead of selling a $60 game up front, give them the game for free, right? And then hook them on it so that they'll put $1 in here, $1 in there. Next thing you know, they spend $100 on the game over the course of a month, but they don't realize it because they're putting in $1. And that's really what's happened when it comes to mobile gaming. It took off huge, but look at the games that are the hugest games on mobile devices, right? Angry Birds. The simplest game you could possibly think of. You're launching a bird at an object and you're trying to get points by doing chain reactions, knocking things down with these birds. Nothing complex, nothing that even takes much thought process. It's something you pick up for a few minutes and you play it, you get addicted to it, and you put in a few more dollars to unlock the new version of Angry Birds, right? You got all these collectible card games now on mobile, where, seriously, I know there's 2 of them that I played that I got hooked on temporarily and spent money on them when I really shouldn't. Mobile games, is it worth it to spend a lot of money on a mobile game? No. But it's an addiction. It's a time grinding thing. Like any other addiction, it's a habit that you become used to kill time, and it becomes something that you just do, right? It's a routine. It becomes a routine. And these collectible card games where you can't win unless you're constantly buying new cards, buying new packs, putting money into the game to constantly keep playing, right? So when you say gaming is mainstream, you're absolutely right. More people today are gaming than ever before. And if you did a poll, they would say, in the past few years, gaming's exploded. Millions and millions of people who never played video games are playing them. But could you consider, launching a bird across a virtual touchscreen or mashing on a card or doing stuff like that? Is that gaming? Or is that repetitive action that hooks a player, and can it be held in the same regard? And that's going to be the contentious debate. Some people will say, yes, it is, and other people will say, no, it's not artistic at all. No, it's not no thought process or anything. And it's all of that kind of together. You know what I mean? What I would say is this. I would love to see a mobile game that has amazing arcing story and all of that, great level of entertainment value and stuff like that. It's not just a cheap, repetitive mini game. That's what the core of it is. Every mobile game that really turns out hugely successful is a mini game. It's not a full-fledged, full-featured video game. And it's funny, again, because then these people say, I'm a gamer. Well, what's your favorite game? Angry Birds. It's like, how can you consider yourself a gamer when all you do is sit around and play a mini game all day? But there's tons of people who do this. And it's going to be your own personal opinion if you judge that as a part of mainstream gaming or not. Now, same thing with everything else, right? Like I said, Street Fighter, which was up until Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter was one of the hardest games to jump into because it had a learning curve that was like, whoop! You had to have precision hand-eye coordination and a lot of practice to get the inputs to get special moves and combos to work. You had to have reactionary ability as well to react to what you see on a screen almost immediately. It was way different than a lot of other video gaming. Now, Street Fighter 4, because they dumbed down the controls, you get shortcuts to do everything, and there's really not a lot of hardcore execution needed to pull off the most complex things in modern fighting games anymore. And to which point you say, well, really, it used to be at the top level at these games, used to be a couple hundred to maybe 200 people in the world who were good at it. Now you can say there's thousands of people who jump into these things at a competitive level because it's a lot easier. Which's the better thing, more people or more difficulty and a truer style competitive game? People will always argue. Same thing with first-person shooters. When they started out on PC and they were hardcore, they were a lot harder to be good at. And now they're a lot easier to be good at. And how many millions of people buy Call of Duty every year? So going mainstream is a good thing in some ways. More money, the ability of it to become more popular, more people talk about stuff than ever before, and you hear about it more than ever before. I'll be honest, I'm happy and proud to see something like Street Fighter held in such high regard by so many people. When in the 90s, it was like a niche, small group of people who even knew what Street Fighter was. Now it's like the big #1 fighting game across the world, and everyone talks about it on social media and everywhere on the internet. But at what cost? Because the gameplay's so dumbed down, it's nothing like it used to be. And it's the same kind of thing with gaming in general in these mobile games. So that's kind of the pros and cons. More popularity, more notoriety, success, maybe even more games, but the quality of games will plummet because it has to appeal to a wider audience who don't want to spend as much time and dedication into it, or they're not looking for this artistic value of the story. They just want to launch a bird across a virtual screen, okay? So there you have it. Next question is from Brian. He says, hey Phil, I wanted your thoughts on some of the latest movies and or video games especially that have been getting bad endings. I noticed in recent years like 2013, 14, and this year, we're getting games or movies that they end on a bad note, or you don't really fully understand the ending, or there's a cliffhanger. It seems to me it's a way of having excuse me, I lost my place here. I don't get how a game can have good characters, graphics, story, and just end on a bad or a confusing note. It's very deflating. I don't understand how some, in my mind, they have a good story. It's like they give up on the ending, or they don't try. They just want to just end it, right? Is it because the game or movie might have a sequel or a DLC ending? I feel that when I see or play a game and I'm not getting the full experience because it has a bad ending, I'm pissed off. I just don't get it, because I would think it's not hard to come up with a definitive ending or even a good ending. And I don't understand why this is happening more and more. Now, for movies, it's always been a thing. Some movies will give you a definitive ending, and they say that's the end, right? And others will always give you a cliffhanger. Horror movies, in particular, are infamous for giving you a cliffhanger ending because they're always looking to make a franchise, let's face it. And you can have a horror movie that's good as a standalone, but because there was a cliffhanger or an open-ended thing, that they could continue the story. I just watched a horror movie last night, Poltergeist, one of the most famous, well-renowned horror movies of the 1980s. Steven Spielberg directed it. An amazing movie. It actually has an open-ended ending, okay? They made Poltergeist 2. The movie sucks. I saw it last night for the first time. I hated it. I thought it was terrible. And it's like, it's just we made a sequel for the reason of making a sequel, not because we actually wanted to continue the story and make it any better. We wanted to make more money. And I think movies do that a lot, okay? Video games. Now, this is an interesting point. Let's look at some video games that people regard as having bad endings, okay? Mass Effect 3. The biggest video game where everyone says it had a bad ending because it was an epic trilogy of games where you were promised throughout the entire trilogy that your choices during the games were going to affect the game's ending, and it really didn't when it came down to it, so much so that they had to actually make another DLC for free to add a real ending to the game that kind of gave your choices during the trilogy an effect on it. Let's take a look at, let's be honest here, The Order 1886, a game that came out last week and has no definitive ending, just ends, has no answers to 99% of the questions that you had about what was going on in the plot of the game. The characters left completely unresolved. It's literally the biggest excuse for an open-ended game. And then look at other games like The Evil Within last year, which a lot of people enjoyed the game but didn't like the fact that the ending wasn't definitive. There was a big mystery at the end. Did you defeat the evil? Did you not defeat the evil? Were you still in a dream state? Were you out of the dream state? What about a movie like Inception, where it's kind of the same deal? You never knew what the ending was. It was open to your own interpretation. But there was no intentions of a sequel with Inception. So I think that this happens for various different reasons, okay? Various different reasons. In the case of video games, I have to say, definitively, I think the reason it happens, yes, is because they're intending to sell a DLC or to make a sequel, all right? There was no excuse in The Order 1886 for the game to be under 7 hours long, even if you took your time with the game, and have an open-ended ending that explains nothing. It's disrespectful to the gamer who spent $60 to buy that game. But the game developer didn't care. They said, we're hoping to hook you with these amazing graphics, the best graphics of any console game ever, right? And this limited gameplay, but hopefully it's enough of cinematic quality that you're going to want to see the story continue in a sequel, or maybe a DLC. And that's kind of the problem with modern gaming. Back in the day, you knew you had one shot. You had to make your game, it had to have a beginning, middle, and end, it had to hook you with the characters in the story, and it had to be great. If you were lucky, the game would catch on, become a mainstream fucking hit, right? And then you'd make a lot of money, and maybe you'd have a budget to continue your game series or make a new game series. That's not the case anymore. These studios now go into it with the intention of, we're just making a blockbuster, it's going to be a success, and we can do whatever the fuck we want because we have a major studio name slapped on our back, because we have a major publisher throwing millions of dollars at us. Take a look at a game like Destiny, which had one of the biggest budgets of any video game ever, and ended up doing zero things original because they were, oh, it's Bungie. And everyone knows Bungie did good with Halo, so why put effort into this game? Just make it something we've played before, but slap nice visuals on it, and it's Bungie, it's addictive, it's good, right? But it wasn't. And people spoke up against it and said, no, it wasn't. Okay? So when you take a look at these kind of games, yeah, I mean, I have to. As a gamer in this modern day and age, I have to be a little cynical and a little suspect and say I think that they think that they're not only going to get you with their $60 price tag up front, but they're going to hook you with more, with sequels and with DLCs. And let me explain something. By no means am I saying that having an open-ended ending is a bad thing. I'm saying that if you're going to do that, you have to price it appropriately. So if you're going to make a 6-hour game with an open-ended ending and nothing explained, you could do that. But you can't charge me for the price of a full retail game. You have to actually charge me appropriately. You have to charge me $30 and say, this is half a game. If you want the continuation, buy the hell out of this, and then we'll make a sequel, or we'll make the DLC that continues it. Don't charge me for a full-fledged game and give me half a game, which is what happened with The Order and why so many people are panning it and saying the game's a piece of shit. So, I agree. A lot of things are very disappointing today because I think they're in the anticipation that they can make more money. Enough of that. If you're actually in business to just make money, you're doing it for the wrong reason. I'm going to say that again, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me, and there's millions of business people out there. Rubble, rubble, rubble. How dare he say that? If you're in business to just make money and you don't care about the business and the quality of what you do in your business, you're doing it for the wrong reasons and you need to stop. Okay? You need to have some kind of an morality or intention behind it. Were you in it to make a good game, a good story, to satisfy the viewer and make them walk away saying, wow, that was something original, different, fun. I'm going to remember that for the rest of my life. I feel better because I played that or saw that. Or are they saying, wow, another 7 hours, wasted, and they throw the controller up. And that's the bottom line. Okay? I do think that these studios need to look at themselves more introspectively and say we're going to do a better job at what we do rather than just do it for the almighty dollar. And any movie, any game that doesn't give you an ending, that's because they either, number one, are hacks and they don't know well enough to write a good ending. They're basically cowards. So much as the ending of the series Sopranos. Remember the Sopranos? Had no ending. It just faded to black and never came back. Because they had no way to write the series that they knew that would satisfy everyone. They didn't want to end it at all, so they just said, fuck it, and they stopped filming. That's the biggest cowardly cop-out you could ever have. You need to have an ending for something that people invest their time in. All right? Time and money. They deserve an ending. So it's either they're cowards, they're hacks, or they want more money. Those are your three scenarios. They're all bad, so you tell me. Okay. Next question. This one is from Plaque XS, or Plax. I don't know how to pronounce it. And he says, Phil, what are your thoughts with the... there's too much water in the game. 7.8 out of 10 review from IGN in regards to Pokemon Alpha Sapphire a few months ago. I didn't read the review. And I very much doubt that the review just said, there's too much water, 7.8 out of 10. I'm sure that there were probably a lot of points in there, like, it's repetitive, it's the same, but there's no innovation, yada, 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 which is pretty much what I've said about every Pokemon game in the series, because it's absolutely true. They stay to their tried and true formula, and it is what it is. One person who likes Pokemon might rate that game a 10 out of 10, and a person who's tired of the same repetitive shit might say it's a 7 out of 10. This person in particular had issue with the fact that there was a lot of water and aquatic gameplay in the game and rated it lower because of it, or made it a point in their review. I am now going to clear the air when it comes to myself and professional game reviewers a la IGN, who I do definitely reference more than anyone else, because I do feel that that website is probably one of the worst journalism websites on the planet because of the way that they do their reviews, all right? I don't disagree with IGN or any IGN's reviewer to give a game or a game review a score, all right? If you want to say that Call of Duty is a 9 out of 10 every year and it's one of the best games of the year, you can do that. If you want to say that a game like Murdered Soul Suspect is terrible and repetitive and it's a 5 out of 10, you could do that. All right? You could say that's fine, because everyone could say a review is an opinion. You're absolutely right. There will always be opinion or subjectivity as part of a review. There's also objectivity, where you need to weigh and balance factual things and say factual things about the game that are true or false, and weigh and balance those in your review as well. The problem with IGN is not the reviewers. The problem with IGN is not the fact that they have a number scale. The problem with IGN is the editors, the editorial staff, the management. Because the truth behind any journalistic integrity of a news or a publication is that there's supposed to be someone who checks your work and basically make sure that it's in line with everything else that the paper and or that piece of journalistic media has said. So, for example, if you are the editor of reviews at IGN, and on your desk you get 3 reviews, and one's a 5, one's a 7, and one's a 2, you need to read those reviews, you need to consult with the people who played those games and get the facts, and then you need to weigh in their opinion. And when you have a number scale, you need to make sure that your number scale is in line with your journalistic integrity. So, for example, this is just an example that I tweeted about the other day. IGN gave Resident Evil Revelations 2 Episode 1 a 7 out of 10. And there were 2 negatives. I read the review. There were 2 negatives in the review. The enemies were too commonplace and too repetitive, too in line with previous Resident Evils. And also, the locations were kind of generic and bland, things you've seen in survival horror games before. That were the 2 negatives. No other negatives were cited in the review. 7 out of 10. Fair enough. That's your review. You can give it a 7 out of 10. Now I'm going to cite the Order 1886 review, which they also reviewed. Different reviewer, same website, different person reviewed the game. They gave the Order 1886 a 6.5 out of 10. Okay, so they said it's worse than Resident Evil Revelations 2. Here's what they cited negative about the game. Not enough gameplay, too many quick time events, the gameplay's too generic, nothing original about the game, cutscenes taking up entire chapters. I mean, I could go on. Not enough monsters, okay? When the game was advertised as a monster hunting game, not enough monsters in the game. Probably about, I'd say on average, 7 to 10 negative things in that review about the game. That's a 6.5. But another game that's half the price, actually less than half the price of this full retail game, which only has 2 flaws, is a 7. Do you see the problem here? 10 flaws, 6.5. 2 flaws, half the price of the other game, 7. The scaling is off. And the IGN editor is not doing his job. What he should be doing is reading those reviews and say, okay, but based off of the facts in front of me, the Order should probably be a 4, and Resident Evil should be a 6.75 or 7. Because of what you're weighing and balancing factually about the games. The editor doesn't do that. He literally says, oh, I read it and it sounds intelligent and it sounds justified. Publish it. And the problem is it's irresponsible journalism on the part of IGN because those scores now go to Metacritic. And Metacritic just doesn't read the subjectivity at all of the review, right? Doesn't factor in that maybe the person who reviewed the game had a bad day or the person doesn't like this genre of game. I remember this really started back in 2011 when PlayStation Magazine, which doesn't exist anymore, they're out of business, no surprise, reviewed Duke Nukem Forever. A terribly low score. And if you read the review, the things that are... it's very, very sexist. It's very archaic and I don't get it. The reviewer was an intern who was a young girl who'd never played the original Duke Nukem games, didn't understand any of the references, and obviously a young girl probably isn't going to make a game that's made for adult audiences, males. I mean, why not have me review Barbie Horse Adventures and see if I give it a good score? You see what I mean? So this is the problem. The editors of these mainstream news sites are not doing their job. And number one, they're not assigning the right people to the right project. And number two, they're not doing their job as editors. They're not leveling their rating scale. They're just saying, well, one game with 10 flaws, but it's a $60 release is 6.5. This game has 2 flaws. It's a $30 release, but we're going to give it a 7. It doesn't even make sense logically. From a logical fucking standpoint of black and white fact, it makes no fucking sense. But because they're a mainstream website, we forgive it. And it's not. It's ridiculous. It's irresponsible, and it fools the consumer. Because then you go to Metacritic, and you say, wow, according to mainstream reviewers, Resident Evil Revelations 2 is the same level as the Order 1886. It's not. It's not. It's a completely different experience. And it's unfair to have those scores like that close. That's ridiculous. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. So that's my problem when it comes to IGN. All right? Not that I think that they don't have the right to the opinion. Not that I don't think they don't write intelligent reviews. I've read the reviews. They're well written. You could tell they all went to journalism school, which is probably the only criteria they used to qualify them to work at IGN instead of actually having a background in gaming. They all went to journalism school. Can they write an article? Oh, hire them for IGN instead of actually seeing, do they have a history of reviewing video games? What is their background in video games? Should the girl who's the 18-year-old intern be given Duke Nukem Forever to review, or should I give it to someone who actually knows what the fuck Duke Nukem is? See my point? And that's the editor's job, and they're all doing a terrible job. It's not just IGN. All of these mainstream journalistic media outlets are not covering video games appropriately. Okay, we'll do one more question, and then we'll take a break. This one is from HorrorPunks610. And HorrorPunks asks the following. Hey Phil, how do you feel about gamers who make decisions on whether or not to buy a game based on real-life personalities of the developers? For example, Tim Schafer of Grim Fandango, or Phil Fish, who independently developed Fez, or Anthony Birch, the lead writer of Borderlands 2, and its subsequent expansions. All three of these game developers gained rather negative reputations from acts like milking Kickstarter, and then abusing the funds that they received, or shoving personal beliefs into their games, making nasty remarks over social media, etc., 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 generally just having shitty attitudes towards people in general. Because of what many gamers see this as a lack of professionalism, they've openly refrained from buying any products that these people, among others, have had any significant input in. I'd like to know your thoughts on the subject. Do you feel it's relevant to make a decision based on these factors, or is doing so equivalent to holding a petty grudge? Thanks for your time. Guess what? That is a completely and utterly subjective question, okay? And the reason that I say that it is a subjective question is because it depends on your personal belief system. There's some people that believe that the artistic value of a game or a movie or any kind of artistic work itself should be considered separately from the person who made it, right? So, for example, just because you know a guy is a gun rights activist, okay, and you, for whatever reason, I'm not saying this is a hypothetical, obviously, are staunchly against anyone owning a weapon, okay? Because that guy went and made a game, and the game was amazing. It was like, publicly, people like it, but you're going to stick to your guns and say, I don't believe that someone who is so for gun rights should have any kind of success, or that, I don't believe in anything they do. You won't play the game, right? Now, that's just one example, and it's actually the issue of contention is unrelated to the game. What if it's related to the game? What if, right, this person is one of these people who adamantly takes to social media and argues with detractors and attacks people and doesn't like criticism and explodes on social media, generally just saying nasty shit left and right. Phil Fish in particular was one of these people who kind of just exploded on social media to the point where he quit. He was making games and he quit. He says, I'm not making games anymore. I quit. This is bullshit. I don't want to be a part of it anymore. That might be a little different, because if you got personally attacked by a game developer, are you ever going to play their game? You know what I mean? So it's a slippery slope. I myself obviously have seen myself in this situation. When you've got people who are reacting negatively to things that you say and do, but that's one portion of what you do. I make game playthroughs and game-related projects primarily. On the side, I do Ask the King, and I do Hate Live, so I do other vlogging series that really aren't directly related to my gameplay. If I said something here on Ask the King that offended you, right, or you don't agree with, does that mean that you are now going to subjectively say, well, I don't want to go see Phil's gameplay anymore because he said this and this, right? I don't know. I mean, it's going to be based off the person. What's my opinion? My personal opinion is this, and some people may completely disagree with me. You may 100% disagree, and that's okay. I let the work of art speak for itself. When I actually play a game, even though I've heard all these things about the game previous or whatever, I put all that aside, and I play the game, and I enjoy it. I'll be honest with you guys. I heard some things about the developers of Life is Strange, okay? And I heard all these things about, people were saying it was sexism and feminism and all this stuff. And instead of letting myself get wrapped up in all that crap, I played the game for what it was, and I love it. I don't care about the game developers. I don't care about anyone involved in the project, what they said or did, or if they whined, or if they did anything. The game itself speaks for itself. It's great. And I love Life is Strange, and I'm dying in March for the next episode to come out. So that is how I approach it. Now, I'm sure there are movies that I've seen with people who have these beliefs and rights that I don't believe in, right? I mean, how many controversial filmmakers have there been over the years for different reasons? Whether they're dating someone who's younger than their age and people find that controversial, or they believe in this really big thing and they talk about it all the time, or they're a Scientologist or whatever, right? How many movies, actors are Scientologists and people make fun of Scientology all the time, yet their movies still go out and are popular. So I don't get myself wrapped up in that. I judge the artistic work by itself, and I don't like to, you don't have to like a person, but you can like what they do artistically. You know what I mean? You might absolutely hate the behavior and the personal beliefs of a person, but they're a great musician and you like their music. I think I see it as separate. Maybe I'm the in the minority there, or I'm the exception to the rule. That's kind of the person I am. I don't let those things become a grudge or whatever that makes me not enjoy something. And I think a lot of the times when it comes to myself personally, that's kind of what's happened is over the years, people have heard me say one thing that they didn't like or whatever, and then I can't watch Phil's gameplay anymore. It's like, but really? Because that has nothing to do with it. Do you like my reactionary humor? Do you like my commentary? Do you like the style of video I put out? Do you find me funny and entertaining? Great. So who cares if I'm for one thing or against another? Just watch the gameplay. And that's what I think people actually have an issue separating. Where do I draw that line? People have issue with it. that's good. You know, that's okay, but that's your own personal thing, and it's different for everyone. Okay. All right, so that's going to be it for part 1 of Ask the King. It's been a long part, and I've only gotten through about 5 questions. The good news is there's some quicker questions coming up, I know for a fact, and I should be able to get through some of these more quickly. But anyway, we're going to take our first break of Ask the King. If you're watching this on YouTube, part 2 will be coming out in a separate video, so check that out. If you're watching this on live stream, well, I'm going to take a short break. I hope you'll stick around. I'll be back in a few minutes with the next part. Thanks, everyone, for watching. I'll be back shortly.